Twilight Sparkle lifted the basket full of apples off of her back and plopped them down on the floor of Applejack's barn. She stretched and cracked her neck to get a little feeling back before turning to Applejack, who was depositing apple baskets of her own. She pushed her Stetson up and wiped a layer of sweat off of her brow. "Whew! Thank you kindly for helping me out today, Twilight grinned at her friend.
No problem at all, Applejack. You know I'm always glad to help.
I just don't know where Big Macintosh could have gone off to. Applejack's eyes narrowed, and she glanced out in the direction of the schoolhouse. He'd better not be hanging out with that school teacher again. Twilight chuckled and put a hoof on Applejack's shoulder.
I'm sure he's fine. There's a reasonable explanation. I'm sure of it.
He didn't say what his plans were when y'all came by and saw him today. Twilight shook her head.
You know him. He doesn't really say much anyway.
Twilight smiled and rubbed Applejack's shoulder.
I'm sure he's okay.
Applejack sighed and nodded. Yeah, you're right, Twi. I'll go out looking for him if he ain't home in an hour.
Speaking of that, I best be heading off,
said Twilight. She motioned to the door of the barn.
It's getting pretty dark, and you know Spike. He's going to get in some kind of trouble if I'm not there to make sure he gets to bed on time.
Applejack snorted. Yeah, you're right. Applejack threw her foreleg over Twilight's shoulder and pulled her into a hug. Thank y'all for helping me out. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, AJ. Anytime.
Twilight took an apple out of the baskets and trotted out of the barn, munching on the apple as she did. The sun had already set, and the moon was just beginning to creep over the horizon, illuminating Twilight's path back to her home. She finished the last bite of her apple, just as the silhouette of her house appeared in the distance. She smiled to herself, and began humming the song Pinkie Pie had sang a few weeks back, about how much she had loved it when Pony smiled. Twilight reached the front door, just as the moon reached its peak in the sky. With the burst of her horn, she pushed the door open and stepped inside.
Spike, I'm home. Sorry I'm late. Applejack and I were harvesting her apples, and it took a little longer than we thought.
Twilight closed the door behind her and was immediately plunged into darkness. Not even the moonbeams shone through the curtains.
Spike?
She called again.
Spike, are you here?
She frowned and illuminated her horn. It was quite unlike Spike to be in bed this early, and even more unlike him to go to bed when she had not returned home. Usually, she returned home to find him raiding the fridge, or playing some game with Pee-wee. She frowned and moved in the direction of her bed.
Maybe Spike went out gem hunting with Rarity and it tired him out.
She mumbled. Twilight trotted up the stairs and walked up to Spike's basket. She lifted his blanket up. Nothing. She turned around and scanned the dark main floor of the library.
Spike? Spike, this isn't funny!
She was only met with silence. She growled and walked back down the stairs.
Where is that silly dragon?
Twilight walked over to her desk and brightened her horn a little more. The light fell on a small magically powered lamp, and she illuminated a ball of light with her horn into the lamp. The light stopped in the center of the lamp, and Twilight twisted a knob until the light shone brighter.
Okay, Spike. If you're hiding somewhere to scare me, I'm coming to find you.
She called out.
This is getting old.
Oh, Twilight. Spike isn't here anymore.
Twilight gasped and knocked over the lamp as she spun around.
Who are you? Where are you?
The voice giggled again.
Why, Twilight, don't you remember your oldest friend?
Twilight growled and lifted the lamp into the air, moving it around to light up different parts of the library.
I've never met you before in my life. Is this some prank some pony's pulling?
Twilight moved the lamp so that it was shining on the bookcase closest to the door.
Pinkie Pie, are you and Rainbow Dash pulling some kind of prank again? You know I don't like it when you do that.
Yes, again. No pony here but you and me, Twilight.
Twilight took a few steps towards the center of the room. The voice had been coming from somewhere close, but it seemed to be coming from all around her at the same time. It reminded her somehow of a gleeful old lady with a high-pitched voice. It didn't sound like any pony from Ponyville, and it was unlikely to be some pony from Canterlot.
I'm getting tired of this game.
Twilight snapped.
Either tell me who you are, or I'm calling my friends here so we can deal with you.
Oh, Twilight, I'm the only friend that you will ever need.
The voice sighed.
Oh, it pains me to hear you say that you don't like games. You used to love them back when it was just you and me.
Show yourself.
Twilight snarled. The voice scoffed.
Well, if you insist, I'm on the table just a few hoofs away from you.
Twilight narrowed her eyes and adjusted her magical grip on the lamp. She took a few steps forward, but stopped when she felt something wet underneath her hoof. Frowning, Twilight lifted up her left foreleg and moved the lamp down to examine her hoof. What she saw made her squeal in fear, and she nearly dropped the lamp. The underside of her hoof was lined with a wet coat of deep crimson blood. It was fresh. To complete the picture, a dark brown feather was stuck at the bottom of her hoof. Twilight let out a shriek and took a few steps backwards.
What did you do to Owlicious?
Well, let's see. You just stepped in a mess of his feathers and blood. I think it's safe to assume that he isn't out having tea with Fluttershy.
The voice began cackling. The cawing laugh echoed throughout the library, causing Twilight to step back a few more paces and flatten her ears.
Please, stop. Whoever you are, just leave.
But Twilight, I thought we were best friends.
The voice pouted. Twilight bit her lip and began walking towards the table again. Each step brought forth more wetness underneath her hooves.
It could just be ketchup. This is all a prank. I'm sure of it.
She reached the edge of the table and slowly raised her lamp into the air. The small beam of light bathed the table in an eerie glow, and everything on the table cast a long shadow.
Where are you?
Twilight squeaked.
I can't see you.
I'm right here, Twilight. Surely you can see what is right in front of you. You are quite the observant mayor, after all.
Twilight squinted and leaned in for a closer look at the table.
I can't see you if you...
Her eyes landed on one object on her table that was out of place. The one object that she didn't remember putting there before. She let out a small gasp and snapped her head back.
Smarty Pants?
Bingo!
The voice cried.
You're just as smart as I remember, Twilight.
No, it's impossible. Big Macintosh has you. I even told him that he could keep you.
Yes, that was something you did, wasn't it?
The voice lowered into an otherworldly growl.
I don't appreciate being abandoned by you, Twilight. I am yours and you are mine. That has been the way it works since we met.
Twilight pulled the lamp back, draping darkness over the table once again.
No, this isn't possible. You're with Big Macintosh. You're just a doll. You can't move anywhere.
Oh, Twilight, don't you see? A toy as loved as I am always finds its way back to its owner.
Smarty Pants' voice grew menacing again.
Always.
No, you're not alive.
Twilight lowered the lamp closer to the floor, revealing the full extent of the bloody carnage. Feathers drenched in blood littered the floor. Twilight's hoofprints were clearly visible in the carnage. And to her utter shock, a small crumpled mass was lying still in the corner nearest to Twilight. She wailed in fear and backed away.
What did you do to my owl?
Smarty Pants giggled.
Twilight, that's not your silly little owl. I'm not sure where he is. Let's just leave it at this. You and I are the only living creatures in this whole library.
You're not alive!
Twilight screamed.
You're just a doll!
Twilight raised the lamp and poured more magic into it to light up the room even more.
I know. You're just some sicko pretending to be Smarty Pants. Get out here so I can tear you apart.
Twilight, I already told you that I'm on the table. It's me, Smarty Pants. I'm your best friend.
I don't know why you stole Smarty Pants from Big Macintosh, but he is going to scour the planet for you.
Smarty Pants chuckled.
Twilight. If you think that moronic stallion is any more alive than your little pets, think again. I wouldn't have been able to get here otherwise.
Tears began to well up in Twilight's eyes as she began backing away from the table.
I'm going to get the princess now.
She said through her sobs.
We're going to burn you to ash.
I'm sorry, Twilight. I'm afraid I can't let you do that.
Twilight growled and shot a bright beam of magic directly at Smarty Pants. The shot hit the doll and immediately set it aflame. The fire crackled around Smarty Pants for a few moments before it slowly faded away, leaving nothing but a scorched mark on the table. Twilight took a few tentative steps towards the table and moved the lantern closer. Yep, no more Smarty Pants.
How did this happen?
She whispered.
Now, Twilight, you really didn't think that you could get rid of me that easily, did you?
Twilight jumped in the air with a yelp, dropping the lamp as she did. It shattered on the ground, forcing the treehouse into darkness once more.
No! Go away!
I told you, Twilight. Toys like me always find their way back to those who love them the most. Remember when I was your only friend?
Smarty Pants sighed. When she spoke again, Twilight heard her over her left shoulder.
All of those nights spent studying and doing our homework. We would sneak into the library after dark and read all of the books that we wanted until sunrise. Don't you miss that? You didn't have to abandon me for your Ponyville friends. How could you do that to me?
Twilight wheeled around and shot another beam of magic towards the noise. It collided with the bookshelf and blew an entire section away, scattering the remains all over the room.
You're going to have to do better than that, Twilight.
Smarty Pants mocked.
Maybe you don't have it in you to hurt your best friend?
Twilight turned tail and ran towards the front door.
If I can't hurt her, I need to escape.
She fired up her horn and her magical aura encased the doorknob. She pulled it to open the door, but the doorknob popped right off. With a frustrated groan, Twilight ignited her horn to shed some light in the room and ran towards the door. She slammed her whole body of weight on it, but it didn't budge an inch. She spun around again and glared at the darkness.
Open the door, Smarty Pants.
She yelled.
Not until you and I have a talk, Twilight.
Smarty Pants replied. Twilight fired up her horn to teleport out of the house.
Gonna go get Applejack. She'll know what to do.
Twilight's horn glowed brightly as the spell started up, but just as soon as she began, her horn sputtered out.
Come now, Twilight. You can't get out that easily. We have some serious catching up to do. Why, I hardly know anything about you since I was locked in a trunk for 5 years.
Shut up!
Twilight snarled. She bolted in the direction of the stairs, running towards her balcony window. As she reached it, she shot another spell at the window, it bouncing right off the glass, ricocheting right back towards her. She threw herself at the ground, and the spell whizzed past her head, hitting another bookcase and sending books flying.
This isn't possible.
She whispered.
A doll can't do this.
Twilight felt a small pressure on her back. a pressure that reminded her of the times that she had let Smarty Pants ride there when she was carrying her around.
Twilight, back here.
Smarty Pants whispered in her ear. Twilight yelped and leaped into the air, but the pressure of Smarty Pants on her back was still there. Twilight ran towards the curtains covering the balcony window and grabbed them in her teeth. She yanked them back as hard as she could, but they wouldn't move in the slightest. She lost her grip on them, and the force of her momentum knocked her off balance. She tumbled backwards, narrowly managing to avoid falling down the stairs.
There's no getting out of our talk, Twilight. I just want to sit down and talk like the friends I know we are.
You're not my friend.
Twilight screeched.
Get out of my house!
Twilight began bucking up and down in an attempt to throw Smarty Pants off of her, but the doll stayed fixed on her back as if it was glued there. She ran over to the nearest corner and rubbed her back on it in an attempt to scrape Smarty Pants off, but it was no use.
Twilight, I must ask you to stop this nonsense at once.
Smarty Pants chided.
It's like I said, I just want to talk. I did what I did to your pets so that we could be alone, just like the old days when you were a filly.
Stop it! Get away from me!
Let's go into the kitchen and we can have a midnight snack and read, just like we used to.
Twilight heard Smarty Pants sniffle.
Don't you love me anymore?
No, I don't!
Twilight screamed as she began bucking again.
Let me out of here! Get off me!
Smarty Pants giggled, and Twilight felt a stuffed hoof pat her on the head.
Twilight, don't you at least want to try hanging out again? Who knows? You could really like it. A tea party could jog your memory of the old days.
No! Go away and leave me alone!
Smarty Pants groaned, and Twilight felt her crawl onto her head.
Twilight, if you don't stop bucking around, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take drastic measures to make sure that you and I hang out tonight.
Stop! Go away and let me out of here!
Twilight bolted towards the door and slammed her body into it.
Unlock the door, Smarty Pants!
Twilight, I'm going to count to 3. If you don't stop screaming like a fool at nap time, I'm going to have to make sure you quiet down.
Please, just leave me alone.
Twilight sobbed.
I want to get out of here.
1.
Twilight's sobs became louder, and she continued slamming her body into the door.
Just leave me alone.
2.
Please, just leave me alone, Smarty Pants.
Twilight begged.
I don't want to be your friend.
3.
Rarity hummed an upbeat ditty to herself as she trotted over to Twilight's library home. She had not seen her friend nor her dragon assistant for almost 3 days now, but it had happened that she had gotten so focused with studying for some big test that she forgot to get some sunshine every now and again. She reached the door and rapped on it 3 times.
Twilight, darling, are you in there? It's Rarity.
Rarity perked up her ears and leaned in closer to the door. The library was silent for a few seconds before Rarity heard movement from inside the treehouse. She smiled to herself and straightened back up just in time for Twilight to open the door. She smiled when she saw Rarity and opened the door a little more.
Hey, Rarity. What brings you here?
Rarity returned Twilight's smile. Her friend looked very well groomed and rested, so she clearly was taking care of herself.
Yes, this was likely just a studying binge. Good afternoon, Twilight. I was wondering if Spike was around. You see, I'm in desperate need for some rubies, and I need his help.
Twilight shook her head, her grin never leaving her lips.
I'm sorry, Rarity. He's not around anymore.
Rarity frowned and cocked her head.
Any more?
Twilight shook her head again with a little more force.
Nope. I'm having a tea party with Smarty Pants right now. Would you like to join?
Twilight leaned in and her voice took more of a conspiratorial tone.
We're making brownies. Then we're going to do our homework together.
Rarity flattened her ears and took a step backwards.
Twilight, did you say Smarty Pants?
I did, Rarity.
Twilight chirped.
I really did, didn't I? She and I have been reconnecting for the past few days, now that big meaning Big Macintosh doesn't have her anymore. In fact...
Twilight's head perked up, and she swiveled her ears in the direction of the kitchen.
Did you say something?
The silence was her only reply, but Twilight nodded as if some pony responded.
Okay, I'll tell her.
Twilight turned her attention back to Rarity.
I'm sorry, Rarity. Smarty Pants wanted to be just us this time. I'm sure you understand. Maybe we can get together sometime next week, okay?
Rarity slowly reached out a hoof and touched Twilight's shoulder.
Twilight, hi.
The instant Rarity's hoof made contact, Twilight flinched back, and an almost primitive snarl emanated from her throat. Rarity snapped her hoof back and flinched away. Twilight stared intently at Rarity for a few seconds before her wide smile returned.
I'm sure we can set up sometime later. Smarty Pants says that next week may not work, but we'll figure something out.
Twilight, please talk to me.
Rarity pleaded.
What do you mean with this Smarty Pants business?
Twilight struggled and began slowly closing the door.
I told you, Rarity. Smarty Pants and I are catching up. We have a lot more to do, so if I could get back to that...
Rarity shot a hoof forward and blocked the door.
Twilight, where's Spike?
Twilight giggled and continued closing the door.
I told you, he's not here anymore. It's just me and Smarty Pants.
Twilight, stop it with this Smarty Pants nonsense at once.
Twilight continued closing the door, slowly crushing Rarity's hoof as she did.
Twilight, you're hurting me.
It's not nonsense, Rarity. It's just us catching up. Now, if you'll excuse me, please.
Rarity ignited her horn and forced the door open a little more.
Twilight, please let me in so I can talk to you.
Twilight pushed back on the door just as Rarity poked her head inside. The door pressed against her neck, but Rarity was able to scan the inside of the library. The first thing that caught her eye was the glint of red staining the floor. She shrieked as she realized what it was.
Twilight, why is there blood on the floor?
Rarity, Smarty Pants says that she just wants us to be together today.
Twilight snarled.
I'll talk to you later.
Twilight immediately slammed her body into the door, smashing the edge against the side of Rarity's head. Rarity groaned in pain, but she forced herself to look around the room for the source of the blood. Bloody feathers were scattered around the floor, and Rarity saw what could only be Twilight's hoofprints in the blood. Finally, her eyes locked onto the crumpled mess in the corner. She inhaled sharply as she saw who it was.
Spiky Wikey!
She screamed. Spike laid unmoving in the corner. His head was twisted nearly backwards, revealing a long, jagged gash at his throat. His eyes were glazed over, and his mouth was twisted into a silent scream. In his claws were the plucked remains of Twilight's owl, and a pile of ash that could only have been Pee-wee laid beside him. A burst of magic shot forth from Twilight's horn, knocking Rarity back. She grunted as she collided with the ground, and a jolt of pain coursed through her cracked hoof. She snapped her head up just in time to see the magical glow encase the door, the windows, and the surrounding tree. Slowly, the bark of the tree began creeping up the doors and windows, sealing the library shut. Rarity could only scream as she watched Golden Oak's library slowly revert back into nothing more than an ordinary tree. Amidst her screaming, Rarity was only barely able to make out the giggling voice of Twilight.
sorry for that, Smarty Pants. Rarity can be kind of forceful when she wants to hang out. Would you like some more tea?
Rarity began sobbing and dragged herself over to where the door used to be.
Twilight, what's happened to you?
I like this, Smarty Pants. It's just you and me now. It should have always been just you and me. Just you and me. Just you and me.
Rarity began pounding on the tree and was about to let out another scream when she heard a guttural voice echo out of the treehouse.
Just you and me. Just you and me.
This has been I Spoke to Miss Smarty Pants Today. It was written by BronyWriter and narrated by TheLostNarrator, with special guest voice actors I Am Shadow 007 as Twilight, Obab Scribbler as Miss Smarty Pants, and itsannacholem as Rarity. Music was provided by Reverb Brony, and artwork used in this video was provided by Dusk-Spark. Okay, so I normally don't do these types of endings, but this time it was an exception just because of how many people were involved in this one reading. I want you guys to make sure you go check out everyone involved, from the VAs, I Am Shadow, Scribbler, and Anna. All three of them did an amazing job on this reading. Reverb Brony, his music is used throughout all of this. Link in the description to the particular song that's used in this video, but make sure to go check him out. He has some wonderful music on his channel. And just, yeah, it totally made, the music just made this video. Oh, so happy about it. And then Dusk-Spark, I want to thank him specifically just because for all the wonderful artwork you guys see in this video, and then just for helping me out with editing and just all the wonderful stuff that he knows what he does. That's why I'm thanking you. So make sure you go check him out, and his DeviantArt. That's in the link in the description as well. Sorry this one took a little bit longer. It took way longer than expected considering all of the sound effects that I used in this one. But I hope you all like it, and I hope you enjoyed it for as much as you can enjoy Grimdark. But yeah, just like I said, make sure you check out everyone involved. I want to thank you guys again, and I will talk to everyone later, okay? Bye.